In this video, I'm going to talk about the side-by-side buttons that we have here and how you can reuse these and edit them to stack at different levels. This one's being used just to launch a pop-up. If you have our SOS Simple Overlay plugin, you can use this layout in your design. It's just a super easy plugin for simple pop-ups. There's no exit intent, but there's time pop-ups. You can have pop-ups appear automatically after a certain amount of time, or you can have them be triggered on click on any element like I just did here. Or if you're a member, you get SOS as part of your membership. But anyway, the bigger deal is that these two buttons are side by side, and then when they get down to a certain width, in this case it's 1200, they stack like this. So you can see once I get down to about 1200, they stack them. And then when it gets down to even more so, down to mobile, there we go. Let me a little wider than that. There we go. I think 375 is the, let me just pull up the actual, there we go. When it gets down to mobile, it's going to make them 100% width, which I really like. I think it looks classy instead of like two buttons of different lengths. On iPad, they're two buttons of different lengths. Let me get this to 100%. So I'm going to show you how this is done and how you can reuse this on other pages. Get this back up here. And then I'm just using a CSS editor I have here. You can use any free editor. I think there's Visual Studio. Visual Studio has a free version. So if I go here, I can download Visual Studio. Actually, I think what you want is this one, Visual Studio Code. This one here. Yeah, so you can download and have a free code editor. You could use an online CSS editor for it, or you could even use text edit in like the text mode. But the big thing I'd recommend is just making sure to save a copy of the CSS. Now there's two ways that we're going to edit CSS. We're either going to override in your Divi theme options area down here at the bottom. This, or you can go to Appearance, Theme File Editor, hit I understand, and then in the coastal theme files, there's a style.css. And so if you're going to go this route, what I would recommend is selecting all of this, copying it, and then opening up your code editor, saving it, and saving it locally on your computer before you make any changes, because this is the main file. So if you mess this up, you'll have that backup file to easily paste back in here. No big deal. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Usually I rock the theme options part, so that's what we can. We'll do that for some of these edits, and other edits we'll go straight to I got the source file here. Okay, so we're talking about the side-by-side buttons. Yeah, regardless, you're going to have to at least access this. Let's open this in a new tab. That way, at least you can see. And I'll just reference this. This is fine. I don't need to reference the other one. So you can see up in this, I've labeled these different sections of the style sheet, so it's easy to navigate. But you can see here in the general area, we have this side-by-side buttons, making anything with the side-by-side buttons class. So I'll just go into this one. We'll enable the Visual Builder because this is the page that it's on. And I want to be clear that this side-by-side button trick is for buttons that are in sections that don't normally support side-by-side buttons. For example, the full width header does support side-by-side buttons. So you don't have to do anything for that one. But unfortunately, that's the only place where side-by-side buttons are supported. So if I go down here to my side-by-side buttons, if I go in here to the row, and then I go to the column that the buttons are in, so the button here are in this first column here. If I go in there, and look at the advanced classes, you'll see the CSS class side-by-side buttons. So that's the first step that you need if you want to recreate this on another page. What I would do is I would just copy this section and paste it. I would just go here, copy this section, go to your new page, paste it, and it's already set up for you. But if you're building from scratch, just make sure that inside your row, inside the column where the two buttons are, just make sure you got this side-by-side buttons class right there. So that's what that's saying. Hey, go find any column that has the side-by-side buttons class and go in and float those buttons. And then it's giving it a margin right for the first button. So you'll see here, this first button has a class called side-by-side 1, and you can probably guess the second button has a class of side-by-side 2. So it's just telling, when you first float them left, it puts them right next to each other. There's no space. So this is just saying, hey, 25 pixels. So if you wanted to change that, let's say we wanted to increase that space. And I think I have, yeah, I got two of these open. I don't need two of them open. And then let me just get this link in a new thing open. So let's just try that. So here they are. They're side by side. They got that 25 pixels of space between them. And if I inspect these, computed here, margin. There we go. You see that margin right, side-by-side buttons, 25. If I turn this rule off, that's what it does when you first, so we don't want that. We want some space there. All right, so let's say we want 50 instead. So what I would do is I'd go here, I'd copy this CSS rule right here, copy it, go over to your theme options area, paste it in right here. You can even scooch it. Oops. That's okay. That's interesting. Paste it in here and change this to 50. Save it. Refresh. And there we go. Now I got 50 in between there. So that's an example of overriding what I've done. We haven't changed this here. This is still all the same, but we've overridden it. Versus, let me go back. It's going to go back to 25 now. Versus if you're comfortable enough with, you've copied this, you've saved it on your local machine, so you have a backup, you could just change it in here. You could go 50 right here, update, and it's going to change it right there. So that's pretty cake, right? But the biggest thing you might want to do is, depending on what these buttons say, is going to determine at what breakpoint you're going to want them to stack, right? So earlier, I showed that mine stack at 12. When this gets to 1200, actually the columns are making it stack, but let's just say, for example, let's say I wanted them to stack at 1300 here. Let's say at 1300, things are getting a little too crowded. I want these to stack at 1300. Oh, it's keeping an old version. That's fine. So right now, I'll just change this to 1300. 1300, I want these to stack. And now they're stacking at 1300. 1301, they're not. Oh, it's annoying that it does that. 1300, they're stacking. So that's a way that you can change that. Let me change that back. Now, if you use these side-by-side buttons on different pages, right now they're all going to, stack at 1200 because they're getting pretty generally targeted here. So let's say this is another page, and I want to get a little. I want to have two side-by-side buttons again, but I want these ones to stack maybe even at 1500 because their text is a little longer, and I just want to be able to do that. What I would do then is I would give this section a unique ID or class. So I'm just going to say test class here. And I'll be proper and do camel case test class, and I don't need the dot. I'll just do test class like that. I'll save this, and then I'll refresh my page, and nothing's going to be different here. Let me go to 1400. You know, so we're going to say at 1500 stack. So right here they're not stacked yet. So I'm going to go to my deal here. I'm going to grab this whole media query right here, copy it, take it over here, and say, hey, at 1500, I want the side-by-side buttons that are in the test class section. So go to the test class section, find the side-by-side buttons, and don't stack them anymore at 1500. And also go in there and get rid of that margin right that we had and add a little to the bottom so there's a little more spacing for folks to touch with their fingers. Let me go ahead and save this. And now, since this is called test class now, it's going to stack them now at 1500. So it's smaller than 1500. It's going to now stack them. And then anywhere else my buttons, my side-by-side buttons were that does not have the test class, they're going to follow this rule and stack at 1200. So that's how you use the side-by-side buttons. That's probably the trickiest modification of all of them. So if you made it through this, boom, the other ones are going to be cake. All right, cheers, y'all.